Hi, welcome to Chapter 8, Articulations. As you can see, I'm trying something new here with the video, so please give me feedback and let me know if you, like the video. You don't have to always have my face on the screen, or if you find it helpful, and just give me some feedback so I can try to make the best lectures I can for you guys. So we're starting articulations or joints, and the very first thing we have to do is, what is an articulation? Well, an articulation is a point of contact between bones. So typically where bones meet, they articulate, or it can be between bone and cartilage. These are some of the more common joints that we've been studying in the body. So first, let's talk about what's the function of a joint. Well, obviously joints are for movement, right? We know that muscles cross over joints and insert on bones, and then when they pull on the bone, they allow the movements to occur. We know joints give us stability in our body. So some joints are fairly strong, joints anchoring your ribs to your sternum or holding your skull together. And then joints also allow for the growth of long bones to occur. Remember that epiphyseal plate, or that growth plate, that's actually a joint, because remember, a joint can be between bone to bone or bone to cartilage, and we'll be looking at that one soon. So we need to talk about the classification of joints. And joints are classified structurally and functionally. And so this is our little outline for today, the functional classification and structural. And I have a little opposite here. So structural refers to what's the material that holds that joint together, and the functional is how much movement occurs. So when you learned epithelial tissue, you learned that it was classified by the shape of the cell and the number of layers. This is similar. So the structure in anatomy always determines the function. So if you have a really solid, strong something joining two bones structurally, there's probably not a lot of movement there. So kind of tie those together as we study this in more detail. So when we're looking at the functional classification, there's some new words here, right? It's all Latin and Greek. Notice we have synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis, diarthrosis. And if you look at these words, you're going to notice that right in the middle, you see the word arthro. Well, arthro is Greek for joint. So what we're really changing is the first part, syn, amph, and di. So a synarthrotic joint, or the word synarthrosis, means it's an immovable joint, whereas an amphiarthrosis means slightly movable. So synarthrotic, no movement; amphiarthrosis, a little bit of movement. Whereas diarthrotic joints are freely movable, and so we call diarthrotic joints synovial joints, and these are common, as you would expect, out in your limbs and your extremities. Now, as far as the structure goes, there's three structures as well. You can have what's called a fibrous joint, which means there's no joint cavity or space, and that the bones are held together with fibrous connective tissue. A lot of times they're held together with a white fibrous connective tissue, which maybe you're thinking like dense, irregular connective tissue. You could have a cartilage joint. A cartilaginous joint, as you can guess, is bone, cartilage, and bone. Or you have synovial joints, and most joints in the body are synovial. And this is when you have a joint cavity. So you have synovial fluid, synovial membrane. These joints always have ligaments. Remember, ligaments connect bone to bone. And you have these in this joint capsule or articular capsule. So I'm kind of hoping this little square over here on the camera doesn't stay. Hopefully that isn't viewable on your side. So what we're going to do is go through the types of joints now, and these are the ones I want you to know. Your book has other ones. I just want you to know these. So we're starting with fibrous joints. So fibrous joints held together with usually some sort of dense, irregular connective tissue. And so you can imagine that that stuff's really strong, right? They're not going to move. So a fibrous joint is always an immovable joint. So structure, fibers, functional, no movement, synarthrotic. And there's two you're learning. One is called a suture, and the sutures are what join the bones in your skull. So they're held together really tight. The fibers interconnect. They are immovable joints in the skull. And then you have the joints that hold your teeth in, and these are called a gomphosis. I don't make up the words, I just teach it. So the gomphosis actually anchors your teeth. So you have them up in your upper, in your maxilla, and in your mandible. Now, our next type of joints are the cartilaginous joints. So remember, you learned there were three types of cartilage in the human body. And when we're looking at the cartilaginous joints, we're going to be really looking at the hyaline cartilage, and we'll look at the fibrocartilage. So if the joint is anchored with hyaline cartilage, then it's called a synchondrosis. See the word chond? Remember, chond means cartilage. So synchondrosis is going to be bone, hyaline cartilage bone. They are usually synarthrotic. They can be amphiarthrotic. But the thing you see here is that some are temporary and some are permanent. Now, we just briefly talked about the temporary one. Remember, if you look at the growth plate, the epiphyseal plate, that's where bones grow. That's how long bones get longer. And that was a layer of hyaline cartilage. It was like a little thick layer of cartilage there. And remember that as the osteoblast grew, the cartilage moves away from it. So that's what's responsible for bones to grow longer, right? Your long bones. But it's temporary because around roughly 18 for women and 21 for males, that's going to, bone basically catches up and it replaces all that cartilage with bone. Now, permanent ones are in a couple locations. This is, you can see here, and now we've magnified it. This is called your costal cartilage. Cost means rib. So you have hyaline cartilage, and notice that it anchors your ribs to your sternum. Now, this is permanent. This is in your whole body. You can see we usually, by the way, cartilage is usually colored light blue in diagrams, and sometimes they color that way on the models, not always. So this is a permanent synchondrosis because it's costal cartilage for where it's located, because it joins the ribs to the sternum, and that's there your whole life. Now, if the cartilage, let me go to my next slide here, is not hyaline, what if it's fibrocartilage? Well, remember, fibrocartilage is in little thick bundles or thick pads. So that's located in 3 areas of the body. Now, the symphysis joints is what we call a cartilaginous joint that's joined with fibrocartilage, and they usually have a little bit of movement. So they're more amphiarthrotic. Write that on here. Examples: the intervertebral disc that are between the vertebra in your back, the menisci. We looked at these in the knee joint. You have a medial and a lateral meniscus, the cartilage in your knee, and then you have cartilage that joins the 2 pubic bones, which is called the pubic symphysis. So bundles of cartilage, thicker cartilage. If it's fibrocartilage in the joint, we have to call it a symphysis joint. And if you look at our little outline for today, this was a real nice, short and sweet lecture. We went over the functions of joints. We defined a joint. We looked at how they're classified functionally, how much movement is allowed. We talked about structure. Now, right now, we just talked briefly about fibrous and cartilaginous. We're going to focus a lot on those diarthrotic and those synovial joints in future lectures.